So imagine if you can use the AI to do all these mappings that you were, referring to.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically what we are
That's what we're trying to do.
But yeah, let me do a step back. So I'm Luca. I lead AI strategic initiative at FINOS. And the AI strategic initiative at FINOS was launched last year. We have two different groups. One is AI readiness, which is where where FINOS members are coming to discuss AI. It's more like to discuss about AI. It's not really a project. And then we have FINOS LLM Exploration, where we are discussing what kind of use cases could be really interesting for FINOS members when it comes to AI. And last year, we had this workshop in London with more than 30 people. And the discussion was what can be the good use case where we can apply large language models in a pre-competitive scenario. And before I dive into the CDM and why I'm here today, I want to show you the metrics that we used in the workshop. So we were looking for pre-competitive use cases. We were not going into the competitive use cases. And we were looking at use cases where you need public or synthetic data sets and not something that was really sensitive or private. So the group was basically, we split the group into subgroups. People were discussing what can we do, what we cannot do. This is the outcome of sorry, you want to take a picture? Yeah. So this is the outcome of the workshop that we had in London last year. So lots of ideas, but what was really important to most of those members attending the workshop was regulatory interpretation. Regulatory interpretation was really a clear use case for LLMs, for AI. It was pre-competitive. It doesn't require any private data because regulation is obviously public by definition. So there were other use cases, but the regulatory interpretation was really the most important for all of the participants. And regulatory interpretation ties very well with CDM because CDM, as you have learned today, is a standard, is a data model, but then on top of the CDM, you can build applications, right? And DRR, maybe you're familiar with DRR because maybe you've discussed today, is one of those applications that is using CDM for achieving a business outcome, which in that case is reporting, right? So what we have done is we have been working for the last 6 months with Oleg, Provectus, and other FINOS members in trying to understand what is the value that large language models can provide to the CDM community and to the DRR project. And today, Oleg maybe is going to show you some proof of concepts of what we have built. And what I wanted to say is that the CDM is basically a common domain model it's a content that can be used to train or to fine-tune a large language model. So imagine the future, we're going to have possibility of expanding the CDM across different jurisdictions, across different asset classes, just by asking an AI agent to do. So that's the kind of the moonshot. Right now, the CDM maybe is only for specific asset classes. Maybe DRR is only for specific jurisdictions. But what if we can expand DRR to cover most of the jurisdictions using AI, right? So that's the moonshot that we are aiming for. That's the big vision that we are trying to achieve. And today we're going to show you just what we have done the last 6 months. And if you want to join the working groups, if you want to join the project, you're more than welcome. We meet every Thursday at 5 p.m. London. And thank you. I hope it was interesting. Oleg, that's...
Ivan actually will run the product. Okay. Because he probably has the most content in terms of if it's giving the right answers. Of course, yeah. But the idea was what Luca said actually is to understand if we can enable people that using CDM to become more efficient using the technology, right? So that was the primary first goal that we were trying to achieve. And I actually asked that answer about the equity. It's probably there, so we can see if it's actually answered properly.
Okay.
But what we've done is we use 2 data sources, the Rosetta and CDM documentation as the input to the large language model. and to see if you can start interrogating all of those data sources to help you understand how the CDM works. And so that was the idea we use for this particular example. We used and built this on AWS infrastructure using one of the cloud models to be able to achieve the goal. And the idea what we have right now is it's a working prototype that should be able to integrate with the FINOS website in the next day or two, where you should be able to get username, password, and start asking questions how to enable you, what information you can find about different asset types, right? The thing that we were interested in is in the standard itself. And as we can see recently, Japan Stock Exchange started using that for the reporting purposes. A lot of financial institutions that we are working with trying to, they all have different trading system. Somebody may have BlackRock, Aladdin, somebody may have State Street. How do you start conversion process from that to the more standard format? So that's one of the things that we are trying and working to achieve at the end of this journey. And I can answer more technical questions after you see what Ian will show you.
Okay. Are we going for it? Yes. Hang on. Here I have it here. This is hands up if you've used ChatGPT or DeepSeek or whatever in the last 24 hours. Everybody's put their hand up. Wow. Neve, I didn't see your hand go. Yeah, Neve put her hand up too. So this is what we all do it all the time now, right? Funnily enough, I tried to get ChatGPT to check the lottery. I found a whole load of old lottery tickets and I took pictures of them and said, did I win the lottery? And it failed completely. It got all the numbers in the wrong order and also don't use it for that. Anyway, so this
I
is,
thought you were asking what numbers to put.
yeah, well, that's where I was going wrong. Yeah, look, all those degrees in maths, and I still play the lottery. I don't know. Sorry. We're going off piece fast here. It's been a long day. So this is the chatbot that Provectus built. Yeah, it works. It's been trained or primed, or the knowledge base is the CDM model itself and the documentation. And because it's doing that RAG process where it's looking at that content and not going off and dreaming things up, it's been quite successful. It's a while since I used this, but you said you used it just now. Where should we start? How split? We can give it a shot. So. Oh, I can't type. Hang on, can I zoom in a bit? You guys can see that fine. Why does it seem so small for me? Hang on, I can just kind of zoom a little bit. How should split? No, I bet you the documentation isn't great on this, so let's find out.
Leave the room.
Yeah. Processing. Okay, hang on. It's looking in the documentation. It's looked a bit in the source code. Let's see what it's done. Based on the information, I can say now split business event. Split business event is represented as a primitive instruction in CDM event model is used to split a trade into multiple branches. I think that's correct. Split primitive is part of primitive instruction data type. Okay. I think split primitive is some part of condition. Okay, it's giving us pretty coherent and specific responses. Luke, have you further questioning? Okay. It has. So let me show you some of the other things. I used this a while ago to, like, there's loads of different users and loads of different potential for this. So I asked the most generic question, gives you some benefits, tells you how to sell it internally, and then how to get started and resources there. So all based on things you'd find in the documentation, but presented with numbers and bullets, how we all present everything these days because we take everything ChatGPT. So if we move to more detailed questions, there's how to implement it. this is again, a lot of this coming straight out of the documentation, but again, it's pulling out the dependency you need to add to your POM file in to create a Maven dependency for a Java project. There's some other information there about how to implement things and how the versioning works and stuff that developers might ask. Can't even remember what I was doing, but it's a while since I asked these questions. So I don't really understand the CDM workflow structure, how state changes happen. It goes through the state business event, time state changes, through a sequence of workflow steps. So maybe we need to combine this question and the one on split, Luke, and we'll get an answer to your question. Business event attribute within the workflow step connects the workflow level to the actual business event. I think that's a pretty succinct statement. It's correct. And the main object changing state is the trade state. So that's correct as well. But yeah, it's just that it's very precise in its responses, and which is welcome, because like I said, it's basing it on these specific sources. Now, it's only as good as the documentation and the model source code. Now,
So like, for example, even with the new CDM model release, this would be a great tool to see the comparison between certain object types.
Yeah.
Like when you need to converge, right? If you're trying to do that. It's not pointed probably to the latest documentation, yes, but we can easily add that data source, and then it should be able to do that incremental changes.
yeah. Or what would be interesting is with the documentation, we can do exercises with the documentation to say, hang on a second, the model's changed drastically and the documentation is still 6 months old. You got to fix that and even propose changes to it. So that could help. One of the barriers I think people find with contributing to projects is there's a series of things you got to do if you got to raise an issue, and the issue has to be in a certain form. You got to do the code change, which is probably the thing the developer only cares about doing anyway. And then you might have to go through all these steps and produce documentation. That's the stuff, the overhead that stops people contributing to projects like CDM. So this has a lot of potential in that space. So this is the most exciting bit, because this gets into one of the areas. So I got it to create JSON examples of payout objects, and it was able to present JSON back, which was really great, because if we want to build, and this is a really difficult area, if we want to build loads of sample data for testing things like DRR, and there's not a whole lot of accessible data out there, and we have samples, but they're old and there's a few hundred of them. But if we need thousands of them, and banks won't give us access to real data because they're frightened what you would do with it, I don't know, but they're frightened that they won't share these things. They might be able to give us redacted versions of their data, which we can then synthesize bigger data sets from, or we could just ask the LLM to do it. Yeah, ask the credit default payout. It checked that through. It seemed to make sense. Hey, what about legal data? What else was I asking here? Yeah, so this was interesting. I asked it how the CDM represents legal agreements, and provide an example of legal agreement, CDM compliant JSON. It's created a legal agreement, and the legal agreements in the model, which might have changed actually, but at the time maybe was a bit sparse, and it just says legal agreement, and then it has maybe an agreement date, an effective date, an identifier, and then it's just legal agreement. There's a block where you can put in stuff, but it actually tried to interpret some useful components from the legal agreement model and filled them out and just dropped them in a very flat structure and said, here's some indicative data, which I thought was interesting and useful. And the best bit, bonus complex. This is the bit where we should all be very excited. I remember now. So remembering key design principles, CDM, reuse and normalization as composed, it would like you to analyze the source code and find existing data type for affirmation. Yes, this was it. Affirmation is defined as a data type, but no one ever finished the work to build out the affirmation process in CDM. and there's no functions and stuff. There's just a data type called affirmation. So and someone was asking me about it as a business event, and could it be done in the CDM? So I asked what are we calling it? We need to give it a name. I need to give it a name. I asked the bot what it could do, and it identified the existing data types. And then it started to create, it gave us an instruction, an affirmation instruction, was designed an instruction, and then decide, according to the CDM, started to build out a function. Now, this is placeholder stuff, but the structure is starting to be there, and it gives you a way to specify how affirmation will be built using the CDM. That's the next step. But I thought it was really interesting that, like, this is how much work has gone into this. Like, lots of hard work, but not a lot of time, I don't think, originally. And we got it this far just by honing in and saying, only look at the model. So, yeah, that's it. And what we want to do is we'll give you guys access, hopefully, maybe as soon as this week. When?
Actually, maybe
Friday. Okay, at the latest. We have Oleg's word. We're gonna send you guys credentials or a link, and you can log in and you can play around with it. And what we want is your feedback to see how you break it, or if it's none. It doesn't actually. What you showed us wasn't realistic at all. It doesn't work at all. That's feedback. One of the things actually we were thinking to add to the sources. So we have the documentation and the model itself. We were thinking of adding all the release notes, because that's a good stock of CDM content, which might be interesting. So, yeah, you guys will get access to it and play around with it, share it with your friends, and give us feedback. And we're going to host this. We're going to have the link to it on the CDM homepage. Good place to end.
the integration is done. We just need to enable the Cognito, so the user security.
Yeah.
That's all.
So we're going to stick it up here with the other buttons here for training and
And
stuff.
if there would be a lot of usage, you may experience that sometimes there are some guide rails. So at certain number of dollars spent, it will stop working for that particular day.
Yeah. But I don't think we need to worry about it.
Yeah,
We won't hit those limits.
so for this particular one, we're using Sonnet 3.5, Anthropic.
So, yeah. This was 5. Yeah. I can't remember. We can check. It's not a big deal to change where the points to. So, yeah, that was, a little bit of very serious but lighthearted end to the day. And thank you to Provectus as well for paying for lunch. And so take a look at it when we send it out and give us feedback. And I'm experimenting with it too. But yeah, it looks really like it has a lot of potential. And if you've got ideas for how to deploy it, for different tools we can build, whether it be projects to build synthetic data, fix the documentation, help with releases, whatever it is, let's get them all as issues in the GitHub and run them through Luca's initiative, and we'll get going.
One of the good things about this is that, let's say, if you have your own implementation of this internally, the way it's implemented, none of the data or your questions actually sent to the outside of the environment where it's deployed. So nobody can see